So these are the 7 questions that I sent out to you, now turned into statements. Teachers need to be skilled enough to work with a particular profile of child, your child. We need to be able to define that profile. One of the ways we do that are through data. We do it through a lot of qualitative information as well. The teacher's belief system about your children is actually everything. They need to believe that radical change is possible. We talk a lot around here about neuroplasticity, and as analytical as all that sounds, number 6 up here, this needs to be a fun place for kids to come to school. They need to think that waking up in the morning and maybe taking a very long commute is totally worth it, because it's also fun coming here. Your kids are smart. They also know they're getting fed what they need, that some of their secrets, things they've been covering up for years, sort of hiding in the back of the classroom the best they can, they don't have to do that anymore. They're actually addressing things that they've been very worried about. But make sure you combine that with fun. And then one of our favorite mantras, children with dyslexia or language-based learning difficulties tend to look at the world differently. Isn't the world lucky they do? As a core philosophy of the school. So I sent out this survey, and 96% of you filled it out, and we actually know the names. And we're going to out you right now. See, I can get away with saying that because you have absolutely no idea if that's true or not. And roughly half of you filled it out, and that's wonderful. It's great feedback for us to understand what new parents are thinking about as they come into the school. In general, as I look through all the results, there's a general tone of excitement and optimism amongst you. Why would you break your backs and your wallets to send your kids to Carroll School if you weren't generally at the outset optimistic and excited about your children's futures? There are a whole range of questions and comments which I share with the administration, who share those with the faculty, about things that are on your mind. Your instructions are very, very helpful to us. Strong tendency for you to trust us. Balanced against, we've been burned before, and we have some healthy skepticism about any school's ability to really understand our child. Is radical change a good thing? Because I've said to all of you before, we've blasted all over our social media and our website, we believe that there are such strengths within your children that we wouldn't want to radically change those. We would radically want to amplify those strengths. So what do you mean when you say radical change? Yes, yes, yes. I hear the aggregate. I hear generally Carroll will work for my kid. There is that anxiety in this room, in your answers, and you're smart people. It makes sense that you would have that anxiety. And a strong desire for communication and partnership, which is so much of what our early September parent conferences are about, and what this morning's about, and what Monday morning's about when you call up and say, you know, I'd like to have a conference with Sue Kingman in the lower school, or Larry Brown in the middle school, or Kurt Mollering in the upper school. We expect you to do that. We want you to do that. Open door, not just as an expression, as a truth. So the first statement, teachers need to be skilled enough to deliver what each child most needs. Not true either. Nobody disagreed with that statement. Right? No, I don't think teachers need to be skilled enough, really. Or 12% of you said whatever. No, you didn't. So this pentagon here explains the 5 core courses that all Carroll School faculty members need to complete early in their careers. Obviously, it starts with Orton Gillingham, but Orton Gillingham is a teaching philosophy, a teaching approach. And if you're a science teacher, if you're a history teacher, if you're a tutor, we get everybody to buy into these core principles. We work with all faculty on how to teach. And it's actually amazing how little pedagogical instruction there is. for America's teachers. We take it on ourselves to teach our teachers how to be teachers. We use data a great deal to inform instruction. We deal with the whole child. So a lot of your comments were, we get that Carroll School is committed to having its faculty masters in Morton Gillingham structured language instruction. But what about the social emotional well-being of our children? Do you teach that as well? Absolutely, we teach that. And a lot of work on what is a school like where every single child feels included and feels as if they are represented equally in this school. So that's our notion of our responsibility to make sure that your children's teachers are properly trained to work with your children. Some of your questions about new and nearly new faculty members. What's Carroll looking for? What qualifications? What mentoring is in place? How do they keep current? How do you measure skill? How do you know that a teacher's skilled enough? One of the things that we do when we interview is we try to discourage people from working here by telling them how hard it is, that this is a really demanding job, and there are way easier teaching jobs you can take. And the people who stick with us and say, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a role in which my expertise is going to directly impact the outcome for a child. And that's one of the ways that we start the sorting hat of who should be working at Carroll and who shouldn't be. Of our 13 new faculty members this year, it was interesting to go through and see where they came from. So 10 of them came through avenues that are incredibly familiar to Carroll. In other words, we have an executive training program, not literally, but people come through our Master's in Education program with Lesley University. They come through summer school, they're alumni, they're past parents, they come from schools around the country similar to Carroll. It's really remarkable how people who want to do this kind of hard work find us, get trained, and then become faculty members. It's also interesting to note that that's 10 of the 13 new faculty members. The 3 who aren't represented on there are teachers of color. And so Carroll has realized that our traditional roots for bringing in new faculty is outstanding, but it's also a little bit privileged. And we're working very hard to make sure that we provide additional access in that way. 150 educators for 427 students. That works. That ratio works. The other ratio that works is we have 20 coaches for 150 teachers and tutors. So each coach has a very manageable workload, and the coach's job is to go into the classroom and work with the teacher, not sit there with a clipboard and evaluate the teacher, but help the teacher figure out how to give children what they most need. So every one of our teachers is coached, whether they've been here for 3 weeks or 30 years. That's just a core belief about this school. Every teacher, no teacher left alone, another Carroll philosophy. Every teacher has an enormous amount of support working with her or him. And this is way too much for you to read, but a lot of your questions were, how do you train your faculty in what areas? What's in blue in the top left are language training that we did last year. In peach colored here are things having to do with the way children's brains function, executive function, cognitive development. In the top right are math training that our faculty did last year. And in the green is towards the social emotional well-being of children. We are obsessed with making sure our faculty are highly trained. 2, defining the student profile tightly enables us to focus. You had so many questions about how tightly do you define it? Are there downsides to having such a homogeneous population? What if my child appeared to be of Carroll profile in admissions and ultimately you determine isn't? See some of that new parent anxiety in that statement. A comment from one of you: the fact that a student profile exists at all is exciting. exactly why my child's at Carroll. Most schools don't define their student populations. My counter to the concern that we're too homogeneous is there are 427 different versions of this profile. That's how many children are at Carroll. We view every child as an individual within this general profile. And I think it's almost laughable to our faculty and administration to think that every kid's the same. Not even close. So homogeneous in terms of learning style, completely heterogeneous and all over the place in terms of personalities and interests and styles and viewpoints and perspectives, which is part of the beauty of the dyslexic profile. But what we're looking for is children who are good thinkers, have significant strengths, their school problem is language-based, they're available to learn, and they're emotionally healthy. Those are the keys to the profile that we're looking for. And what we're not very good at dealing with is when the primary issue, and sorting out what's the primary issue versus secondary issue is hard, but the primary issue cannot be you are not a Carroll kid if your primary issue is behavioral. Learning differently sucks, and kids kick up behaviorally in different ways. But what we are determining is the primary issue is language-based. So a child might go completely inward. That might be the protective response to learning differently. Or might go completely outward. Might have huge anxiety. Might turn into the class clown. There are behavioral reactions to learning differently, but the behavior can't be the primary. Can't primarily have a psychological or emotional difficulty, a lower IQ. The cause of school problems is brain injury. That's not our kid. A child who has only attentional issues but no language issues, not our kid. Not on the autism spectrum. Not due to educational deprivation. These are kids who have great parents who have tried to deliver quality education to their children, and it just hasn't worked very well. Not sensory impairment, like the eyes or ears don't work well. Not health related. So when we talk about a type profile, that's what we're talking about. What does tightly mean? How often are profiles updated? Constantly, and I'll get into that in a second. What happens when a student presents differently than the admissions profile? Doesn't happen very often, but we roll with it. If you're outside of that definition, which you won't be, because Stacy and her team are so careful in admissions, we would do what we always do, sit with you and talk some more, and think together, and work through this, and make sure Carroll's the right option. Will this type profile develop an altered sense of sameness that won't be reflected beyond Carroll? Really interesting question. We haven't experienced that. What we've experienced in our alumni, and you'll hear from our alumni this morning, is that their development of a sense of self at Carroll has carried them out into the larger world of difference in really strong and powerful and productive ways. 427 kids, that's the counter to everybody's the same at Carroll. They are, but they're not. I don't mean to be doubtful or disrespectful. Please understand that we come from a place of no matter what they did, things did not get better for my son. Every teacher said, don't worry, we got this. That's that healthy skepticism that I think you come into the gym this morning with, combined with great hope and optimism. We understand this. And that we don't expect you to trust us unilaterally. We expect to earn your trust and do that through your child's experiences. One of the key ways that trust starts to build is our honesty in telling you how your children are doing. The classic school, and you probably all have done this, parent conferences, oh, she or he or they are so wonderful. They're such a bright child, right? We love, right? Tell me how my child's doing. We tell you all those things about love, but we also tell you how your children are doing. So one parent said, we We want to see data as a parent. In a previous presentation, it's mentioned that it's hard to figure out exactly how to share this with parents, but we want it. The next one was, I don't want to see the data as a parent. What can be done to avoid showing me the data? Whatever you do, don't show me the data. So what we had done, okay, honestly, I fabricated that. But some parents really want to take that analytical, quantitative understanding of how their children are progressing through their time at Carroll. And all you need to do to find that out is call your division and say, I'd like to have a data meeting. For your kids, we don't have a lot of data yet. We're already accumulating it, but we don't have a lot yet. What we have is what you sent to us, the neuropsychs that you sent to us, what you sent in admissions and said in your September meetings. But over a pretty quick period of time, we develop a lot of data about your kids. One parent said, and I totally agree, we can't fix what you can't measure. So we measure tons of things and are more than willing to share with you how your child's progressing through those. Classic MCAS question. How intrusive is testing at Carroll? Because lots of public schools kind of stop teaching kids in February and just work towards MCAS performance. We never stop teaching your kids, and assessment is embedded into every day at Carroll. The kids fundamentally don't know when we're assessing and when we're not. There's some examples during the year when it's very clear that we are, but mostly it's embedded. Where do you get your data? How are data shared? Can we see our child's data? What about the beauty of qualitative information? We get our data from so many places you can't even believe it. We have things that we have developed called data meetings with parents, where you can request at any time a data meeting. For new kids, there's not a lot yet. Can you see it? Absolutely. And we do keep track of qualitative items. Think about it kind of like this. There are 5 major categories of data that we're keeping track of. Daily work samples. What did your child do yesterday? And what is that telling us about what we should do with your child on Monday? That's diagnostic prescriptive teaching. Daily feedback. Curriculum-based assessment. How's your child doing with precisely what we're teaching at this moment? Third, readiness to learn screener, which is our look into the affective or social emotional world. How available is your child to learn? How is motivation, attention, comprehension, focus, social distractions? We track those things as well. Cognitive performance, what's underneath the academics? Processing speed, working memory, executive function, that are essential skills for learning. And then we do standardized testing 4 times a year embedded into the curriculum to make sure that your children are closing the gap between where they are right now and where we think they ought to be, which is far higher. We also started keeping track of spider webs on children. So this is a child, and the further out the blue goes, the greater strength it is, and the closer in towards the center, the more significant weakness it is. And we track these kinds of things. And what I love about the spider web is it tells us where this child's doing great, but it also tells us what this child most needs. So we use data visually to help us understand how to keep moving your child's program to meet his or their needs maximally. Teachers need to believe that radical change in a child's educational path is possible. You said, define radical. So here's my definition. A child's profile is not that child's profile for life. Things change dramatically. Weaknesses can become strengths. Strengths can become bigger strengths. Effective effort is what it's all about. We try to teach your children how to work effectively to get the change that they want in their life and in their functioning. What the world doesn't really understand is that learning can improve capacity. You can actually become smarter through effective effort and through the miracles of neuroplasticity. You said, I love this statement, I wish all schools saw this as their job. What a great statement. Our job is not to deliver curriculum. We do deliver curriculum. Our job is to help your child develop a much stronger learning profile. We absolutely see that as our job. How do you share this statement with students? Do you? We do. It's embedded in every message that we give to our children. Say to our faculty, your job is to maybe use these words, but do this implicitly. Make sure your children understand what they're doing is important, that you as their teacher believe completely in their abilities to succeed, that you will never quit on them. They might try to quit on themselves. I, as teacher, will never quit on you. And your results are directly related to the kind of effort that you put in. Not mindless bang your head against a wall effort, but effective effort. The learning pit is something we've started talking with our faculty about. What actually is learning? Is it that genius in the front row who knows the answer to every question and has probably her hand up all the time? No, that's actually not what learning is. Learning requires that you move from a position of passivity into a pit of despair, of uncertainty, of questioning. That's where learning actually occurs, and that's what's supposed to happen. That kid in the front row with her hand up all the time, she actually went through that pit. You just never saw it. And you end up on the other side. Trying to teach kids that change, fundamental, radical change is very possible. Oh, anxiety question. Do you ever see a child enrolled at Carroll who doesn't make growth? For us, the notion of growth is change. And all sorts of philosophy about flow, or the fancy way of saying is the zone of proximal development, which is tasks that are just at the right challenge level. And the prospect of success is very high, but it's not too easy. That's the definition of good teaching. Keep kids in the flow zone. And so sometimes that zone is down here. Sometimes it's up here. Sometimes it's... And as long as a child is moving in a positive direction, that's victory. That's progress. So I think in so many ways, the answer to this question is no. We've never seen a child incapable of moving in the proper direction. We're able to adjust our time schedules because we're so individualized to meet a child's needs, to go as quickly forward as possible and as slowly as necessary. Core teaching philosophy of the school. I think also the classic bell-shaped curve, you know that? Most kids will do fine, some will do really fine, and some won't do well at all. And that's just the way human behavior falls. We use the international distress sign on that one. That is absolutely not the way we think about education. Our job is to take every child as fast forward as possible and as slowly as necessary, walking up that mountain. That's the way we view it. So time is ticking, 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 so I'm just going to bolt through the last three. Neuroplasticity leads us to understand that teaching changes brains, core philosophy of our school. Little pathways turn into big pathways, turn into highways, turn into rapid, efficient superhighways. That's what we think our job is. See what you're being saved from? All remediation and no fun makes for a lousy school experience. So we talk about the triple scoop approach to education at Carroll. The coffee ice cream here is the remedial, structured, very systematic, teaching kids to read and write and spell and do math better. The strawberry is cognitive development, help children's brains function better in places where they're pretty inefficient as they come into Carroll. And the chocolate on top is the dyslexic advantage. All these places where our kids are so happy and shine, and their difference is an extraordinarily positive difference. And the cone is a emotional well-being of your child. That's sort of our core view of what our job is. Oh, I love this statement. For my child, fun is defined as anything that's not school. So I see that as a challenge. And whoever wrote that, I want you to tell us that 3 months from now, your child sees a lot of school as fun. I think 99.9% of Carroll School kids see a lot of what happens here every day as a lot of fun. That's the way we view the orange is the fun. The blue is the intense, hard-working, remedial components of the school. I'm going to breakneck speed here because I have to. Happy kids. See, happy kids, happy kids, happy kids, happy kids. Children with dyslexia tend to look at the world differently. Let that soak in for a second. Isn't the world lucky they do? And that's just core philosophy. One of you said yes, and they need to hear it a lot. But boy, the beginning is rough. Regular schools don't see our kids that way. Thank you so much for helping them shine.